Welcome, my name is Michelle Dutrissa and I'm an independent demonstrator with Stampin Up. What I'd like to share with you today is a little bit of information on the Stamparatus. Stamparatus is a really wonderful tool that we have in our catalogue, and it's a tool for repositioning your stamps, and you can use this tool for creating many cards exactly the same. So if you're wanting to reproduce invitations or Christmas cards and you're wanting to make all the same card over and over again, you can use this tool for this purpose. When you order this Stamparatus from the catalogue, what you will receive initially is your Stamparatus base, which has a hinge on two sides, leaving the other two sides open for 12 by 12 cardstock. The base, if you flip it over, you also have your silicone feet on the bottom of it, which holds your surface fairly sturdily on your table, and two magnets and storage holders for those magnets. Now these magnets are very, very strong, and as you can see here, I've actually wrapped one of my magnets in some painter's tape so that I can easily remove it or pick it up. When you're using the magnets, try not to use them close together. You can use the two of them at the same time, but if you allow them to be close together, they are so strong that they will attract to each other, and if they come together very quickly, they can snap and shatter. You can buy replacement magnets if they do shatter, and they retail for around about $21, I think. Also with this, with the Stamparatus, you'll also get two plates. So you've got a hinge section that will take plates on both the side and at the top. One point to remember, that when you are using a Stamparatus or storing your Stamparatus, never store your Stamparatus with your plates in. You could store it with one plate in, and that's fine, but you can't store it with two plates, because this door will not close without breaking your hinges. So it is very recommended by Stampin Up that you actually remove your plates and store them independent, or not so much independently from, but sitting within that area of your Stamparatus, but not within the hinges. Along with your plates, you also get a foam mat, and a foam mat is very important when you're using photopolymer stamps. Because your photopolymer stamps doesn't have the bit of foam in it like your red rubber stamp does, your photopolymer stamps need a little bit extra cushioning to get a good stamping surface. So Stampin Up have supplied a thin mat that can be used with your photopolymer stamps on the Stamparatus. In the catalogue, you will also find two extra products that you can purchase along with your Stamparatus to help you with the use of your Stamparatus. The first item is this Stamparatus Deluxe Foam Mat, which has got a surface on it with the grid marked on it for you. And this one here is marked in centimetres, but it also has your inches along the outside edge. This is really good for lining up your stamps and also lining up your cardstock. The other thing that Stampin Up sell also is your grid paper that you can purchase. Works perfectly with your Stamparatus. So with your grid paper, you have inches on one side and centimetres on the other, just the same as our large grid paper. And this is really good for when you're wanting to protect your surface, even though the surface of both your mat and your Stamparatus can be wiped down. I'd like to share with you now a really fun project that you can use with your Stamparatus, and that's using the hinges to step down each time you stamp. So I've taken a piece of cardstock here, and this piece here measures 6.5 centimetres by 14.4. And what I've done on my Stamparatus plate is I've attached my photopolymer stamp. So I have my foam mat here. I have my grid paper on top just to protect my foam mat. And I've worked out where I was going to position my stamp, so then that I could have it's stamping at the top and also stamp down the bottom, because as I move my stamp down each notch or each hinge level, then I can stamp at different positions. So I'm going to grab the soft succulent and I'm going to pop my magnet down just so that my cardstock doesn't move. I'm just going to pop it right there on the edge like that, just making sure that little tab that I've got there is out of my road. I've positioned my stamp where I want it to go, and that is quite easy to do by taking your stamp and positioning it on your cardstock at the level or the place that you want that to be positioned. Close your hinged plate and that will then pick up that stamp. Now I'm just going to lift this up for a moment, and I just want to make sure that that's nice and straight. Yes, that looks fine, and I'm going to take it down to the bottom, to the third hinge from the bottom, and just make sure that I've got that positioned where I want it to finish at the bottom, and I do. Now you will have to do a little bit of working out if you're using a different stamp to the one that I've got here, but I have worked out and I have used this stamp before, so I do know that this will work in this position. So it's always good to have a bit of a test run and a bit of a play before you start. So I'm going to ink up that stamp, and to make it a lot easier when inking up your stamp, it's probably always best to put a stamp box underneath there, and that gives you a nice flat surface to ink up on. And I'm going to close my stamping plate and press down, and that's stamped that lovely and clearly on that. Now this is where the beauty of the Stamparatus comes into play. If I wasn't happy with that and I wanted it a little bit darker, I can then re-ink up my stamp, close this again, push down, and it stamps exactly in the same spot as long as I haven't moved anything or nothing has moved out of the road. Now this is where the step stamping comes from. You can move this down one hinge, ink it up, and stamp again. And you can keep going with this. So this one here I've inked up twice, so it's going to be quite dark. This one I've only inked up once. I'm going to move it down another hinge, stamp again, and as I go down I'm doing second and third stamping, so I'm getting lighter and lighter as I go down. And then stamp my last one there, just pushing a little bit firmer just to make sure I get the lightest ink coverage there. And as you can see, you get that monochromatic colouring using one colour and just getting lighter and lighter as you go down. Now I have made a card using that technique, but instead of going down in the same colour, I've used a different colour for each stamping, making sure that I've cleaned my stamp each time before adding the next colour. So that is one way of using your Stamparatus, to be able to do your step down stamping and to be able to reposition and stamp if you don't get a good stamped image the first time round. Now how else can I use my Stamparatus? So let me just remove that plate, and I'm going to bring in another plate here and pop that into there. And this time I've got one of our large all over stamps. So this is a red rubber stamp, and this has got that foam in it, so I don't need to use that foam pad. So when I'm going to use this stamp, I'm going to remove my foam pad and pop that down. I'm going to grab a piece of cardstock that I have sitting here, and we're going to pop that in here. Now, one of the things with the Stamparatus is when you put your cardstock right in that center there and you close your plate does close down and you've got a little bit of an angle here. So sometimes anything, when you've placed your stamp in this close to your hinge area, you may not get clear stamping. The one way to help stop that from happening and to get a clear image is to use your silicone mat. So I've got my silicone mat here, and I'm just going to place that right in that corner there, which is just going to give a little bit of a shim to my stamping area. So now I can place my cardstock back close up into that corner and pop my magnet down. Again, this time I'm going to grab my stamp, position it. Now normally if you're using a stamp of this size, you would use the very large stamping block that Stampin' Up sell. But I find myself it's very hard to be able to stamp this and stamp it and get a really good image. So with the Stamparatus, this is really great for this because this can pick up that whole image and I don't have to be trying to handle the big Perspex block in my hand and trying to get a really good image on my cardstock. I'm going to grab my Memento Black for this, and I'm going to ink this up, and again I'm going to pop that plate on that box underneath to give me a nice even surface to ink my image. Going to make sure I've got really good coverage of ink on my butterfly stamp. Close my stamp up and press down. Now I have seen on some of the YouTube channels where people have been using a block to help press this down to keep the image, to get a really good contact with the image. And I've made one for myself by just using one of our acrylic blocks. And from the reject shop I bought some heavy duty felt. Now this is a felt that you would normally use on the bottom of your furniture to stop it from scratching your floors. It's got an adhesive backing on it, and then it's got the felt on the other side, and it's quite thick. I did still find that this is actually still a little bit abrasive, so what I've done is I've got a piece of normal felt, and I've added some of our adhesive sheets to the back of it and attached that to the top of my felt. Now what this block does, it allows me to press over that to get a really good surface or press down surface to my stamps. Just a really easy way, particularly if you don't have a lot of strength in your hands. You can't, this just works out quite well. So let's have a look and see how we go with the stamping. So I've missed one little corner up there, and when I look at my stamp I think I might have missed inking that. So here is where the Stamparatus comes in on its own. I can re-ink up this whole surface. I know that this has all stayed in place. And I can close this up and press down, making sure this time that corner is well stamped. So there you have it, perfectly stamped. So the Stamparatus is a really good tool. Now over the next few weeks I will show you other ways that you can use your Stamparatus so that you can also get the best out of it. If you haven't purchased a Stamparatus and you live here in Australia, pop over to my online store at michelledutrissa.stampinup.net and you can purchase yours from there. If you have any questions, please contact me and let me know. Have a lovely day. Bye for now.